Hi everybody, we're live here with several participants from the Advanced Instructional Strategies MOOC on Coursera associated with UCI Extension, and I wanted to welcome you to this live hangout, and we're going to basically talk about using the question formulation technique tonight and give you a live demonstration of using this technique in a synchronous environment here using Google Hangouts. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through our participants here and give you a quick introduction to everybody, and then I'll have them introduce themselves and tell you about what school they work at, what subject they teach, and that sort of thing. It looks like we have somebody brand new joining us, just popped in our Hangout. I'm glad you could make it. This is Craig. I don't know where Craig is from off the top of my head. Where are you from, Craig?
I'm in Jakarta in Indonesia.
Oh, wow. Okay, and what time is it there for you?
7:05 a.m.
Wow. The time difference is mind-blowing in this Hangout, as we'll see. So welcome. Where do you teach in Indonesia? What subject area? That kind of thing.
I'm a head teacher, which is a principal of an international school here at the school. We've got 8 schools throughout Indonesia. So we've got K-12 here. So the little ones all the way up to the big kids.
Okay, well, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Next, just going down the row is Daniel. Daniel's gets the award for the most ungodly hour of having a Google Hangout. It's 2 a.m. where he lives. He's in South Africa. Daniel, tell us a little bit about your role in education.
Okay. First, I'm coming from a technology background. I'm studying IT. I'm presently doing my master's in IT. So I'm coming from the IT background, but very, very interested in educational technology. But I teach presently. I'm doing an online tutoring, teaching grade 6 and grade 7 students maths. And I've also had an opportunity of teaching for a year before now, grade, what's that now, 9 and 10, maths and physics as well. All right, so currently I'm not teaching, I'm schooling presently, but I've had opportunity of teaching once before. And presently I'm doing a tutoring job for grade 6 and grade 7 students, teaching them maths. So that's my case. I'm not really from an education background, I'm from an IT background, but I'm very interested in merging IT with education. My research and everything is geared towards education line things, using mobile technology, using e-learning for education for students, and things like that.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. We're glad that you stayed up really late and are joining us. Next, we have Elizabeth. She's in Connecticut right now. Elizabeth, what is your role in education?
Okay, I'm on the end, it looks like for me, but I'm actually in Vermont, not far from Connecticut, but it's northern Vermont, and I call myself semi-retired. I worked in education from elementary, and then the last 6 or so years I worked as a technology integration specialist for a K-12 district. And currently I teach, I've taught virtually in several situations. I'm now teaching for a community college of Vermont in an online course. But I do a lot of Google Educator training work and presentations and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. And then next we have Jeezy, or sorry, I think I said that right, Jeezy. Jeezy, I think your mic is on mute, so there you go. And she's joining us from São Paulo, Brazil. Tell us a little bit about your background in education.
Yes, I'm a teacher here in Brazil. In fact, In fact, I teach at a public school, so this school is located in a really poor city, so I have a very special kinds of students. But I was born that place, so in fact, it's like I'm teaching people from my own neighborhood. Sorry, and I chose this job because I really like it. So my main interest areas are really education and the use of technology in education, because that's something I really see in today's world. So that's the reason why I chose this course, to learn more about it.
Okay, thank you. We're glad you joined us as well. And then last but not least, we have Juliet. And Juliet, it's at 1 o'clock, 1 a.m., as I understand it, from where she's joining us. She's joining us from the UK, near Liverpool. And Juliet, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in terms of education.
Okay, I'm a languages teacher. I'm head of department at a high school in the north of England called Newlands Academy. I'm not full-time in school now because I do a lot of training of teachers nationally. I speak at quite a lot of conferences and I write resources. And one of the things I'm really interested in at the moment, and one of the reasons I'm doing this MOOC, is because I've written a brand new business language qualification for students aged 16 and above, because there's a bit of a problem in England. The choice of language course at 16 plus tends to be the A level, which is quite demanding, and there is a massive decline in the number of students taking languages at that age. It's affecting universities as well. So I've written a new business language course, and my focus now is to develop blended learning resources for teachers around the UK.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm delighted to have everybody here. So what we're going to talk about and kind of model today is something called the Question Formulation Technique. Have you ever guys heard of it before this class?
A little bit, not a lot.
No. All right. That's okay.
No, not really. No.
Cool. Well, I like showing people new things. This is like one of my favorite instructional strategies, and we'll just go through it. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm sure it's going to take just a second to get that going. If you guys could let me know when you see it, that would be great. You see that? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through a couple of slides and tell you a little bit about the technique. For anybody that's watching live right now, and if you wanted to join in on these slides and look at the slides or access them later, you can get them really quick by going to bit.ly, and then /AIS 427. Well, that's just a really quick way that you can get it. It's also in our event page so that you can access it there as well. So one of the quotes I'm going to start out with, and there's a link to the article here from the Journal of Online Teaching, but there was a book published a while back by Ken Bain. It says What the Best College Teachers Do. And one of the themes that came up over and over and again is centered around questions. And in the article it says the best teachers want students to develop their own questions. And really that is what this question formulation technique is all about. And I think that's the power of it. One more quote, one of my favorite quotes. This is from a book called Teaching is a Subversive Activity. And I love the title of that book. But this is a very old book from 1969, but it's a very modern pedagogy, I think. But the quote is, once you have learned to ask questions, relevant and appropriate and substantial questions, you have learned how to learn, and no one can keep you from learning whatever you need to know. And looking at our course and the mission statements of everybody that was shared in one of our online discussions, it's clear to me that, like, as educators, one of our primary central goals is for us to get our students to have this desire to learn throughout their life, well past our courses. I've never met a teacher that says, "I don't want my students to learn after they leave my course," right? So this technique is also going to help out with that. So I think really this is all about using questioning. It's a strategy for using questioning as a tool for learning. And this comes from a nonprofit institute located in Boston, and it's called the Right Question Institute. And there's a link to their site right there. It's just rightquestion.org. And the way I discovered this technique was by reading their book called Make Just One Change. And I like it because, like, it immediately grabbed me, because I could handle, as a teacher, I can handle just about one change a year. It seems like there's so many things that you have to focus on. So this really is just about making one change in your classroom and seeing what will happen. So I'm going to, in the next couple minutes, I'm just going to share with you the essence of the book, and you can use the technique that's described in the book, and you don't really need to read the book, but it's a great book, and it has a lot of examples in it as well. So there's 4 rules that we're going to abide by now. So I'm going to go over the 4 rules. So in just a minute, we're going to start generating questions. And the rule number 1 is, I want you to ask as many questions as you possibly can. The more the better. Number 2, don't stop to discuss. We're not going to stop to discuss, judge, or answer the questions. We're just going to generate questions. Number 3, we're going to record every question exactly as it is stated. And then lastly, number 4, we're going to change any question that we might have, or sorry, any statement that we might have into a question. So before we go further, do any of you have any questions or comments about these 4 rules?
Pretty clear?
Pretty clear? Okay. So what we're going to do in just a second is I'm going to give you a prompt, and in the QFT they call this the Q focus, or the question focus. So this is what we're going to generate our questions around. Okay, and then what we're going to do this week is we're going to use some of these questions that you're going to generate as our discussion forum questions. So we'll put them into our Coursera MOOC, and we'll have a broader discussion and try to come up with some answers and some opinions later, not today. So now, the way that we're going to do this logistically is we're going to use a Google Doc to record all the questions. You guys should all have, if you're a participant in this, you should have a link to that Google Doc. If you click on the chat toolbox on the left, it's the icon that looks like it's a blue icon with some 3 lines of text on it. One of the last things that was posted was Around the Net QFT in Action Google Doc. So if you click on that, you'll be able to see the questions as we generate them. If you can't get there, that's okay. We have enough people I know that are in there that will be able to capture those questions, so we can keep going. So that being said, I believe my next slide is going to be our question focus. And here it is. The question focus is simply online assignments. Everybody ready? So let's generate some questions about online assignments. Okay, and we could lead, since we're all in this together, let's read them out as we go. So just one person at a time, read them out, and if you can type them in there, great. If not, I'll get them in there.
Chris?
Who wants to start? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm looking in the chat list here, and I can't see the link to the document. I'm sorry.
Oh,
it's from Gazy saying here it's slow.
Oh, it's right above that one. You see it?
I can only see her message, maybe because I came in late.
Okay, let me. Oh, okay, good, good. I'll do it again.
Thank you.
There we go.
Got it.
Okay, so we have one question already. How can I make sure that the assignments, how can I make sure the assignment truly belong to the students? Another question. Anybody else? Just say it out loud and then we'll make sure it gets recorded.
How can they be effectively structured?
How can we effectively structure? How can they be effectively structured? Okay.
Okay, if I just chuck them on there? Chuck them on the
You know what? It's getting a little chaotic, so let's just read them out and I'll put them in there. So we have another one. What is the best tool for collaboration? We have another one after that. How can we make sure our assignments are clearly understood? Another one after that. How can we make... Oh, same thing. Number 5, we have how can they be effectively structured. Okay, let's pick up from there.
What about should we modify the time frame for an online assignment compared to an offline, longer or shorter? Don't know how to word that.
Okay, should we modify the time frame for online versus offline? Okay, what else?
How do you monitor the authenticity of a student's answers? How can you check it's their work?
How do you monitor the authenticity?
Yeah, of the students' responses.
Of the students' responses, of the students' work.
How can we generate a proper rubric for grading online assignments?
Okay, and thanks for typing that out there. How can we generate a proper rubric for grading online assignments? Okay. What else? Keep on going.
How can we design project-based learning in an online environment?
Good. Okay, next. Keep on going.
What's the right ratio of direct instruction to student activity?
How can you design a collaborative assignment and ensure all students participate?
Okay. Let's see. Craig.
I think Craig asked the question.
Yeah, Craig, what was that last question you asked? The ratio?
What's the right ratio between instruction and student activity?
Ratio between instruction and student activity. Was it how can we determine?
Sure.
Instruction and
student activity.
Oh, and student activity. Okay.
What is the best way for students to get to submit online assessments?
Good. What is the best way
for students to submit or to turn in online assessments?
Okay.
How do you allow for creativity in online assessments? I mean, assignments.
Okay.
Now, how do you build in peer assessment?
Okay.
And one more.
Oh. Right.
Go ahead, Craig.
Can I? No. How can we make sure the students can talk to us if he needs help?
How can we make sure that students can, what was that last part?
Talk to us if they need
okay.
help.
Thank you. All right.
How do we assess individual contribution in a group assignment?
Okay.
How do you deal with digital equity?
The dog liked that one.
Yeah.
I don't think he's getting enough computer time. Okay, a couple more questions.
How can you showcase students' work to other students?
Okay.
Another one. How can we motivate students? Could we use gamification, for example?
I think that could be 2 questions, so I'm going to write that as 2 questions. All right.
How do we increase engagement among students?
How do we engage all students? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Even though I'm now wondering if that fits into assignments, but
Oh, we're already at 22. Let's do a few more.
How do we monitor the technical resources or access of each individual student? Make sure they can participate.
Okay. Any other questions out there?
How do you deal with students who just want to get it done rather than I guess it's ensure quality work or
take good one.
How about if I do 2 questions on that? How do you deal with students who just want to get it done, and how, the second question tied to that, how do you ensure quality? Okay, anything else?
How do you ensure the task doesn't become too big a job, that it's manageable?
Okay, how to ensure the test okay. All right, I'm going to call time on that, and great job, everybody. We got into a good workflow at a little bit after the end there. So the next step that we want to do is we want to go through all the questions, and we want to categorize them as either open or closed-ended questions. So for the purposes of this activity, we'll say closed-ended questions. They are questions that we can answer with, usually like one word or a number or a very, very simple fact. We won't expand too much more on that, but open-ended questions are something that don't lend themselves to be answered with one word or a number. Does that definition make sense to you guys? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, would somebody like to just read out the question, and then I'll let you guys chime in, and we'll put an O. I'll put an O or a C next to each question to indicate what you guys thought it was. Well, I guess I can read out the questions. How can I make sure the assignment truly belongs to the students? Would that be open or closed?
Open.
Okay. What is the best tool for collaboration?
Open.
Open.
Okay. How can we make
Open.
sure our assignments? Okay. Oops. I hit my 0 instead of my O. How can we make sure they understood the assignment?
Open.
Okay. How can they be effectively structured?
Open.
Should we modify the time frame for an online versus offline assignment?
It's closed initially.
Yeah, I agree. How do you monitor the authenticity of the student responses / work?
It's open.
Open. Okay, how can we generate a proper rubric for grading online assignments?
Open.
Okay, how can we design project-based learning in an online environment?
Open.
Open.
How can we determine the ratio between instruction and student activity?
Open.
Open.
Okay. How can we promote group or teamwork?
Open.
How can we design a collaborative assignment and make sure all students participate?
Open.
Open.
What is the best way for students?
Anything with a how has got to be an open.
Whoa.
I was going to say that.
Okay, how do you allow, that's an open, yeah? How do you build open? How can you make sure the students can talk to us open? How, okay, we're going to speed this up. How can, wow. How can we showcase? How can we motivate? Can we use gamification? Closed?
Initially closed, yeah.
How do we engage students? Open.
Open.
How do we monitor technical? Open. How do you deal with students who just want to get it done? Open. How do you ensure quality? Open. How do you ensure the test doesn't become too big of a job? Open. Okay, so glance through those real quick. Did we get them all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I found one question just underneath.
Go ahead.
I brought it up here. What do online assignments entail?
Oh, you want to add that? Okay. And that would be open, yeah? Okay. Good. Okay, so we have 27 questions. Now, the next step in the process would be, wow, what do you guys think about the questions we generated in terms of open and closed? I don't think. What are your,
yes, I guess
what are your
when you
thoughts on
ask
that?
how, Oh, yes. I think when you ask how can we do something, or what is the best thing for blah, 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 we have an open question. So only question number 6, we ask, should we modify? So it is a yes or no question. All the others, how can you do it? So you have a wide range of possible answers.
Yeah. And I don't think I can ever recall doing a session where a group has generated so many open questions as opposed to so many closed. So
Really?
that's really interesting. So the next thing that I want to have us do is I want us to take one of the open-ended questions, since we've got a lot. You pick any one you want, and we're going to reword it so it's closed. Anybody have an idea?
You could put should, would in front. Could.
Well, let's pick a specific question. Pick one.
Okay. Number 15, how do you build in peer assessment?
Okay.
There could be should.
Oh, okay.
Could.
So you're saying, should we build in peer assessments? So I'm going to add that to the list down there. And it's closed. And kind of as, oops,
Yes, me.
all caps lock.
Number 1. Yeah.
What did you think? What do you notice as we change it from an open to a closed? What are your thoughts on that?
It becomes more of a focus question, I suppose. Easier to answer.
When it's closed, it's more of a focus?
Yeah, and easier to answer, probably.
It could be more limited, too.
More limited. Okay. Now let's go the other way around. Let's take one of our closed ones, so I guess number 6 would be a good one, and change that to an open one. So should we modify the time frame for online versus offline assignments? What would be a good way to phrase that as an open-ended question?
How do we?
Okay, how do we modify? So how do we modify the time for online versus offline assignments? Okay. And then, so with your classes, they do this this process of looking at their questions and evaluating them to see whether they're open and closed, and then changing a couple of them, an open to a closed, and vice versa. You can kind of have the students talk about what is the benefit of closed questions versus open questions. Are closed questions okay? Are open questions better? What do you guys think?
They're both valuable. Chris, just a question, may I?
Yeah.
So when you're using this in the classroom, would you train the students to use this technique themselves, and one student would be being the recorder and then someone else is helping them rewrite the questions? Because it seems like a really good management technique to actually use the document itself.
Exactly. Yeah. So not that you would want to model it maybe 1 or 2 times, and then, you know, as with a lot of things in teaching, we try to get our students to be the leaders, right? So yeah, exactly what you said. I think it's that's exactly where you want to go with it. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about open versus closed. Do you have any thoughts? Does anybody have any thoughts about the open versus closed question?
The open question is, it requires more research, or, well, either prior knowledge or research. It's more challenging for students.
More challenging, yeah. requires more prior knowledge, and you'll as you get to look at the questions your students are generating. What's tricky with the question focus is sometimes maybe your students don't generate the questions you want them to, right?
Yeah.
But this tells you a lot about what their background knowledge is, and so you may have to change your instruction, and you may have to go back a step, or you may just be blown away by the questions that you get, and discover that your students are farther than you thought in terms of where their critical thinking and that kind of thing. So I'm going to switch over back to our presentation. So we did we break any of those rules? I don't think that we did as we did this process. I might have broken it. I might have said that was a good one. I think I really have a hard time when I see some questions. I have a hard time to say no, that's a good one, right? But we don't want to. We want to make sure we encourage our students not to do that during the generation process, because somebody says that's a good one, and then the next one doesn't get a that's a good one. It's like, oh, what's wrong with mine? I did that's not a good one, right? So that's a form of judgment, even if it's a good positive judgment. We want to just say, hey, no, just keep your poker faces on, and let's focus on generating as many questions as we can. And then we went through the improvement, or you can call it whatever you want, but we evaluated our questions, and we changed some, and we discussed the advantages of open versus closed questions. And now what we're going to do is I'm gonna step back, and I'm going to let you guys hash this out. Keeping in mind what we're going to do with these questions is we're going to put the top, let's say top 3, because we have so many. We're going to put the top 3 that you guys choose in our discussion forums this week for our MOOC. So let's look over our questions, and let's maybe talk about which ones do you think we really want to discuss in our discussion forums.
There seems to be a theme of assessment, so maybe one of the assessments would be good.
Okay. So start basically lobbying for a particular question.
Okay.
I think the team one is good with number 11, because you can do that with the kids, and you can do it with teachers, and how you generate teamwork, but also rules and rewards and directions. Kids can always come up with their own way that they do teamwork.
Okay. I like the way, I don't know who did it, the anonymous ferret, but you could just make the question that you like maybe bold, and then we can talk about, you guys can talk about the bold ones. So.
Yeah, I'm really interested to know about motivation.
Yeah.
So the question then is how we can motivate students?
Yeah.
Okay. In the context of assignments and assessment. Okay, somebody else picked the gamification. Also the question, should we build in peer assessments?
I like number 4, just to make sure that the students actually understand what it is that's required of them. Whether that's a rubric or a marking guide or something that you build with them. Similar to number 8, right?
Okay, I was also thinking of question 8, a question on the rubric for grading online assignments. I think it's also a good question. And how do you set standards for grading? Because online assignments now, you are not seeing the people, so you need a general rubric that will cut across for every student.
Okay. So how can we generate a proper rubric for grading online assignments? So it looks like we have several bolded questions. So now the challenge becomes, how can we make one or two or three? Actually, in this case, we'll say three. How can we pick out three of those to rise to the top?
I think some overlap actually. So I wonder if you could group them. You know, like I see motivate students. Well, gamification could be used as a way of motivating. So that some can clump together.
Okay. So do we want to leave that one as just how can we motivate students to...
And just have, maybe with an understanding that could be a technique for motivation. Maybe, I don't know if there's some sort of... doesn't eliminate it that way.
Okay. What does everybody else feel about that one? Is that a biggie?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to bring that one up to the... Like, we'll put a star by that one. Or, you know what? We'll get fancy here, and we'll highlight that one. There we go. Okay, so that's one of them, let's say. What's another? Not to say, though, if it doesn't get chosen that you guys couldn't go in and start a thread. You're welcome to do that anytime you want, of course. So.
How can we promote teamwork? Number 11, perhaps.
Number 11? Okay. And there was another one that was kind of about that as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, somewhere. Where was it? Down the bottom.
And I think that would bring up some other questions in terms of the issue or the question that Craig brought up about like the individual assessment of group work versus
17,
the group
number
assessment.
17.
Number
Yeah.
17. So you guys want to pick that one?
Sure.
Okay, one more.
Another big clump, I think, is the assessment and the rubrics are forms of assessment. So there's a bunch that could fall into one of them. I don't know, pick one, but
The assessments and rubrics is that you could get into peer assessments under that.
Right.
The quality, I think.
Yeah.
Or would it be the other way? How do you ensure quality?
Yeah.
And then the rubrics is maybe one strategy under that, and then the assessments might be another strategy. Peer assessments might be another one.
That's true. Because then you have a bigger umbrella with quality.
Daniel, does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that's fine. That's very good.
Okay. So we've got 3.
Yes.
Woo! Congratulations, everybody. Virtual high fives. That's great. Okay, so that's going to be, I'll put those 3 questions in our discussion forums after the hangout here, and then I think that'll generate a lot of great posts and some great sharing and some more questions probably, which is great. So you guys did awesome. So just going back to my slides for a second, I want to make sure we get everything. We did that. Now, just going back over the whole process with you guys. So before you do this, the teacher has to, probably the hardest thing I found is generating the question focus. Tonight's question focus online assignments, it didn't seem like that was such a big deal, but it was struggling with several different variations of that. And so usually a question focus is something, it could be a picture, could be an audio file or something like that, or it could just be some sort of a biased or controversial statement or something like really simple, like online assignments. So that's the part the teacher has to do, and I think that becomes an art as you practice that. And then when you go over the rules for producing questions, and again, the first time you do it, it's going to take longer, but I think you could do it in about an hour of synchronous time, probably a little less, maybe 15 minutes. But then you can have students do it themselves after they get good at this, and I think you can probably give them 15 to 20 minutes to come up with what we did this evening, if they already were familiar with the process. They produce the questions, they categorize the open and closed, they improve the questions, they prioritize them, and then the next steps, what are we going to do with these questions? Sometimes you could throw that question back out to the class and say, what do you guys want to do with these questions? What should we do? But I know many times, especially as you're first getting started, that purpose will already be, the teacher already has a purpose for that. So in this case, we're going to put that in our discussion forums and discuss those as a class. But it could be like you're going to do a project, or you're going to find a picture, whatever subject. I think it'll be different. And then the last step we'll do real quick right now is just reflecting on the learning process itself, kind of a metacognition, like thinking about thinking behind the learning, is what we'll do. So as we look back at what we just did together, how is that different than what traditionally would happen in a class?
Making the students think, come, I would say, a lot more engaged than if you were just going to explain to them.
Yeah, most of the time the classroom operates with the teacher saying, these are our learning outcomes for today, and these are the resources we're going to use, and these are the assessments we're going to do, and the teachers will drive it right from the very front, whereas this, we're letting the students generate some of the questions if we use the technique that can drive the content, that can drive the way the activities are, or the information is presented by the students. It's just giving some of that power and influence to the students, yeah?
Probably setting a better sort of environment for learning. You engage in them, you're increasing the level of interest before you actually begin.
Some good thoughts. Who normally asks most of the questions in a class?
Yes, usually we ask them the easiest questions. So the kind of thing like, oh, what color is it? Is it pink or purple? Oh, is it purple? And then we go on like, oh, purple, this color means this and that. So usually we just ask a simple question to them, and we gave them the whole explanation. So we usually tend to simplify things and give them the easier job.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I just turned our screen sharing off so that people can see us as we talk. I think that would be a little better. What other thoughts?
Well, your point about the focus question, that makes me, the more you think about that, then that is really essential to have the right topic or whatever if you want them to dig into it. Yeah, definitely. And I want to be sure to clarify that this is the hard part too for me, is like a lot of times when you're thinking of these, you'll think of the question. Yeah. Okay.
And it's very important that question focus. It could be a lot of different things, but we don't want to make it a question.
Okay. Because
then we're doing the student's job. So the student's job is to do the questions. The teacher cannot make the questions when you're using this process. So keep that in the back of your mind. It's like I see sometimes when the participants of the MOOC are submitting, they've chosen the QFT as their option for their peer assignment. I saw a few that they didn't quite understand that, like they had questions as their question focus. It's not a question, so it's something that you want to focus the questions around. So
I was thinking that usually the teacher has some questions in mind. Usually we have something that we want to achieve with it. Now, are there possibilities that after the students have raised the questions, such kind of questions or such objectives are not reflected in what the students have asked already? Or after prioritizing and rearranging, is it possible that the important questions or the questions that would carry the objectives are not chosen, since this is now in the hands of the students? I don't know if you have experiences on that.
Yeah. So you're just to rephrase, what happens if your students don't choose the questions you really want them to?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, that's tough. You can not to say that you can't bring up other questions after this whole process is done. So you can address that, I think, after, but don't try to influence their questions after you give them the question focus. Just let them go, let them run with it, and then as you're reflecting on the learning or afterwards, you can go, well, hey, did you guys consider this question? And why didn't you consider that? And they may have thought of it, or they may not have. And then I think that also gets to the point of probably looking at the depth of knowledge that your students have, the prior knowledge. If they didn't get to some of the really the meaty questions that you wanted them to get to, it's like maybe they don't have enough prior knowledge to ask those questions. So that's where you kind of have to do a little bit more searching and kind of feeling out in terms of where your class and your students are at. Does that help?
Yes. Now, but I have another question.
Okay.
After hearing him, I'm wondering, this strategy, isn't it useful to use it after you have taught a concept or before it? I'm thinking because generating of questions is going to largely depend on their understanding, their prior knowledge, like we have all talked about. So I'm thinking, if I've already discussed the concepts in the class, rather than just push out the questions for maybe a homework or a discussion question, they can now generate questions based on the concept we have already discussed. I don't know if you
know the answer. I think, Daniel, the answer to that is yes and yes. So I've seen, and I've used this at the very beginning, like where students don't have any prior knowledge at all. So when you're using it in that context, I think what your purpose is for them to be creative, right, and to diverge and to generate an interest in the topic. For instance, like if you're going to have them read something and you showed them if it was a magazine article or something like that, you show them a picture of it, and then that was your question focus or something like that. They would go into that reading with a lot more intensity and pinpoint laser-like focus because they want to get answers to some of those questions that they're going to generate. It's also great to do as like you said also though as after they have prior knowledge. So I think it could be used in the beginning, middle, or end of your unit or your lesson that you're doing.
Is this technique, Chris, similar to inquiry-based learning? Is it similar or is it the same?
Yeah, I think it's a form of it. Yeah. That's fair. Let's see. Keeping an eye on our time. I don't want to keep you guys. I know it's getting very early or very late for some of you. Let's try to wrap this up in about 2 minutes because then we'll be at an hour. In our event page, there's a link to the PowerPoint or the Google slide presentation that I showed you. So there's a couple more slides in there. And there's like an example of another teacher's question focus that he used with his class and some of the examples of the questions that he got out of it. And one of my own, I teach physics, so we were in Newton's laws of motion. So there's always this law that's, if force A acts on B, B acts on A, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. You guys heard that? So I did a QFT for that in my question focus was just tug of war. And they, in the context of a physics class, the questions were very like physics-like, and some of them were silly. But like one of the questions just blew me away. I never would have gotten to this. It never would have even come up if I would have taught this in a traditional way. Was what would it be like to have a tug of war in outer space? And I was just like, whoa, you know, like I didn't want to answer that. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to think about that, you know. And that was great. I was so overjoyed with that, and I think that's kind of what some of the great scientists and the great minds of throughout history, the one thing that they have in common was their questioning ability. Einstein was certainly a great example of that. Like at age 16, he was asking, what would it be like to ride a beam of light? And I was like, wow, I don't know. So that drove him to a lot of his theories and special relativity and general relativity and such not. So I think that the questions, this is a great tool that you can put in your strategies belt. You can pull it out virtually any time, and the more practice your students have at this, the better they're going to get at it. And I think it is one of those skills that once they learn how to ask questions, and they ask really good questions, the right questions, it's going to drive them to lifelong learning. And I hope you guys will use it and share out what you're using it and how you're using it. You can share that out with our class hashtag AISMOOC, or the Right Question Institute sometimes will use the hashtag QFT for Question Formulation Technique. So are there anything that we need to address, or any closing thoughts from anybody before we go?
I'm just interested to know, once you've generated the question list, what do you do with the questions?
Well, yeah, so that's that's a wide open door there on what you can do with the questions. So for the, I mean, you could do exactly what I'm doing right now. Okay, you guys are gonna, okay, we're having a unit, and the unit is on density or something like that. I give you science examples because the unit is on amphibians, and you have a question focus, and then, okay, so what are we going to do with these questions? So it could be you put them back into the online discussion forum, and that's, you have students that are moderating each, who came up with a question, what group came up with it. Maybe they're moderating that section of your, that thread of your forum, or maybe it's a launching point for a research project, or a blog post. You want them to write about it, or you want them to create a graphic or a thing link. You could do a lot of different things. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
I see somebody's feet. Oh.
They're not mine.
Somebody just came in, I think.
I think Star just came in. She was like on standby, and I don't. Maybe she didn't get access to the Google Doc in time or whatnot. But Star, we see your feet. I like your shoes.
Thank you, Chris. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see everyone around the world.
It was great to have you all, and I'll see you guys in the MOOC.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris.
I'm just going to go ahead, and there were some questions and answers that were submitted by people watching this in real time. So the first question was, what time frame would you give the QFT effort, i.e. class for technique, class for exercise? So I think I talked about that, but generally I found that if you're going to do this you can do it in an hour. I think an hour is about right for doing it the first time. And if your students aren't very tech savvy, that, setting up the Google Doc and all that, if they've never done that before, it might take a little bit longer, or you might want to work on that beforehand and kind of let them know what's going to happen. But once you get going with it and the students are familiar with the process, it could literally be 15 to 20 minutes. So hopefully that that answers your question. The next question is, if any student would say that I don't have time to watch the videos, then how should we handle that situation? I think that question, maybe it has to do with something else. So I'm not going to answer that one, but you can tweet me or email me and give me a little bit more specifics on what we were talking about here, because this one isn't about watching videos. Next question, what would be appropriate online assignments for ADHD students? That is a good question. I think you wanted to maybe add that to our list of questions that we were generating. So we can throw that in our discussion forum and talk about that some more this week. So I'll make a note of that. Okay, and then the last one we have here is it necessary to allocate a time frame to online assignments? If yes, what should it be based on? Okay, so that's another case of not a question about the process itself, but a question about our question focus online assignments. So if you want, you can start a thread in our discussion forums for week 3, and we'll get in there and we'll give you our thoughts and some answers on that. So that's all the questions I had from the Q&A app, and with that being said, I'm going to sign out. See you, everybody.